Hello everyone, today we are breaking down Percy Jackson and the Olympians Season 1, Episode 1, I accidentally vaporized my pre-algebra teacher. But before that, remember to like the video, helps out the channel a lot, and subscribe, and yada yada yada, let's get to it. The first thing we hear is some exposition from Percy Jackson. I didn't want to be a half-blood. It is dangerous and you die in horrific ways. So half-blood means you are part god and part mortal. So basically a demigod. We then get a quick montage of some strange things that happened to Percy when he was a kid. Specifically things he sees but no one else does. The first thing he sees is a Pegasus, which is from Greek mythology. It is a winged horse and is sired by Poseidon and Medusa, which is kind of funny when something gets revealed next episode. Nobody else seems to be able to see these creatures. People tell Percy that it is in his imagination. He gets labeled as weird because of seeing these mythological beings, and is kind of an outcast. He stops telling people about these creatures because he wants to be normal, to fit in like every other kid. So why can't mortals see these creatures? It is because of the mist. The mist is a supernatural force that twists a mortal's sight from seeing monsters, gods, and supernatural occurrences by replacing them with things a mortal's mind knows and can comprehend. So the stuff is there, they just can't see it because of the mist. We fast forward a couple of years and see a slightly older Percy. He at least now has a friend, Grover, who he is comfortable with talking about these things he sees, like these Greek myths. Percy is on a school trip to a museum. They are in the Greek section, so we see some of the statues from that time period. Percy looks down at his paper and the words start to move around. This is because he has dyslexia, or at least that is what he has been told. Percy looks at the statue of Perseus, who is holding the head of Medusa. He has a flashback of when his mother, Sally Jackson, took him to this exhibit. She tells him that she named him after Perseus not because he was a hero, but because he managed to find a happy ending, which I think is the goal for most of us in the end. Percy snaps out of the flashback saying out loud, "Mom." Some girls make fun of him for this, and Mrs. Dodds, a chaperone, tells him to control himself, which he gets annoyed about because what did he do? Those girls are the rude ones. Mr. Brunner comes over to settle everyone down. He is the teacher of the history class. He tells Percy he believes in him and hands him a pen since he broke his pencil. He then tells him to hang on to it. It is a mighty instrument, which could be referring to the famous quote, "The pen is mightier than the sword," or just a happy coincidence. In the next scene, we see Grover and Percy eating lunch together. We see that Grover is a vegetarian. Percy takes his lunch meat, and Grover gets the cheese off his sandwich. Percy wants to fight back against his bully Nancy. Grover thinks he should just let it go. Nancy throws something at Grover, and Percy has had enough. He gets up to push Nancy, but before he can touch her, she flies backwards into the fountain. Nancy says Percy pushed her. Clearly, Percy was involved with her going backwards, but he didn't make contact, which is strange. All the kids look at Nancy and laugh, and Mrs. Dodds stares Percy down, using telepathy, saying it was only a matter of time before we found you. Where is it, Half-Blood? Where is it? She starts to transform, and nobody else seems to be noticing other than Percy. We see she is some kind of bird-like creature. She is a fury. There are 3 of them, and they are goddesses of vengeance, who punish people for crimes against the natural order. They are also servants of Hades, the king of the underworld and god of the dead. So it seems Hades believes Percy took something of importance if he sent a fury to watch him. The fury lands on top of Percy. Percy is still holding the pen Mr. Brunner gave him. The pen transforms into a sword that goes through Mrs. Dodd's chest, seemingly killing her. Percy then faints. He wakes up to a crowd around him. Mr. Brunner and Grover are there. Percy is asking where is Mrs. Dodds and if anybody saw her transform and attack him. Mr. Brunner looks at him confused, saying, "There is nobody here by that name." So Percy is even more confused now. His visions, he always thought they were just in his head, but now he is being attacked by them, and no one believes him. Is he losing his mind? Percy and Grover are in the headmaster's office to discuss how Nancy ended up in the fountain. Percy insists that he did not touch her, which is true. Grover tells the headmaster that he saw Percy do it. Percy is deeply hurt by this. His best friend seemingly lied to the headmaster and got him kicked out of school. In the next scene, we see Percy with his suitcase leaving the school. Mr. Brunner comes to see him off. Mr. Brunner tries to give him some words of encouragement, how he is special, but Percy does not want to hear it. He just wants to go home at this point. Percy returns home to see Gabe, his stepfather. Gabe is a bit of a putz, doesn't have a job, and is kind of mean to Percy and his mother. In the books, he is way worse, like he is really toned down for the show. In this, he's almost just like a goofball, if anything. Percy finds his mother, she hugs him. Mr. Brunner called Sally and told him what happened with Grover. It was Percy's only friend, and to be betrayed like that has to hurt Percy quite a bit. She asks Percy if there's anything else he would like to talk about. Percy tells her that things have been happening to him and that he is scared. His mother looks at him concerned, but then calls for Gabe. She tells him that they are going to go to the cabin for the weekend and they need his car. Gabe is not too thrilled about this, but the promise of sandwiches when they come back convinces him to be fine with it. In the next scene, we see Percy staring at the ocean. A figure is out there with a lamp and says, "Who are you? So weak, so scared, so sad. Run away, little hero, before you get hurt." Percy awakes, it was just a bad dream. So whatever or whoever this was clearly wants Percy to stay away from something. It is the only reason why they would be trying to scare him with these threats. Percy and Sally enter the cabin. It is near the ocean. Percy wants to have a serious conversation with his mother. He goes over what he is feeling, that these visions that he sees, these daydreams as he calls them, are starting to feel more and more real. His mother seems to know what's happening and asks what she said to him. Percy looks at her confused. He never told her about Mrs. Dodds. From Sally's expression, she realizes she kind of messed up. She then goes into some lore about the cabin, that this is the cabin where she met his father. She tells him that she knew his dad was different somehow, different than any other man she had met, because he was a god. Percy is confused by this because it is a weird thing to hear. She then tells him that the stories she told him about the Greek gods are real, that Percy is a demigod, a half-blood. Percy pauses after hearing this. That is what Mrs. Dodds called him. Maybe his mother is correct. She tells him that half-bloods aren't safe in the world and that terrible things are drawn to them, to harm them before they are strong enough to fight back. It is what he has been feeling all of his life, but it is now coming to the surface, him realizing his true powers. Grover comes knocking at the door. Percy is still mad at what he did and does not want to see him. Sally lets Grover inside and he tells them that they need to leave now, that things are developing very fast. Sally is a little annoyed, thinking she had until morning. So Sally and Grover seem to know each other well. So Grover knows what Percy is. We then see Grover has goat legs. So he is half human, half goat. He is part of the Greek mythos as well. He is a satyr and Percy's protector. In Greek mythology, they are minor gods of the forest, so they are very protective of animals and nature, which is why he's a vegetarian and gives his lunch meat to Percy. Part of their job is to find the Greek demigods and bring them to Camp Half-Blood, where they can be protected. It is a place where they can learn about who they are and their powers, which is where they're heading right now. Something is after Percy, which is why they need to leave for the camp now. It is also why Grover got Percy kicked out of school. It was the only way to protect him from what was coming. Grover says something strange is happening, that most of the time he can sense danger a mile away, but he could not sense Mrs. Dodds. That the mist kept her hidden from him, which never happens. So something very powerful is after Percy. Percy wants some answers from his mother, but right before she can tell more about his life, the Minotaur shows up chasing them. The Minotaur has the head of a bull and the body of a man. The creature was born of a human and a white bull. Poseidon sent the bull to King Minos, I'm going to mispronounce some of these names, so sorry, to sacrifice. The king didn't do it though, because it was so beautiful. This angered the god of the sea, so he had Aphrodite make the king's wife fall in love with the bull, and if so facto, the Minotaur was born. The Minotaur is wearing underpants as well, which we saw earlier in a card Grover showed Percy. Grover said everything they've talked about with Greek mythology was training for what is ahead. He also tells him he is 24. Satyrs age slower than most beings. The Minotaur starts ramming into their car. They ram back. The Minotaur hits a truck, giving them some breathing room, but they also crash as well. so the minotaur will be right on their tail. The three exit the crash car and head towards the camp. Once they cross the boundary no monsters can cross, Percy will be safe. Sally goes to Grover and makes him promise to always protect Percy. He swears to protect him. Sally cannot enter the camp because she is human, so she must leave Percy. Percy does not want to leave her, but he has to. We hear the minotaur coming towards them. They don't have long now. The minotaur is tracking Percy by his scent, his half-blood. So Sally takes Percy's jacket, hoping to confuse the minotaur, giving Percy enough time to cross the boundary. Percy and Grover head towards the boundary, while Sally distracts the minotaur. Percy turns around and sees it grab his mother. He starts to head back towards them. His mother turns to dust while in the minotaur's hand. Percy, believing his mother was killed, pulls out his pen sword he was given by Mr. Brunner and heads towards the minotaur. He intends to do battle. The minotaur charges. Percy is almost able to take its horn off, but couldn't cut all the way through. It disarms Percy and the sword goes flying. The minotaur is about to squish him, but Percy is able to dodge just in time. He then climbs on the minotaur's back. He grabs the horn he almost cut off and stabs the minotaur. The minotaur turns into dust with nothing left except the broken horn. Percy passes out and awakes to campers and a familiar voice. Mr. Brunner. You have to remember that it was Mr. Brunner who gave him the pen sword. So of course he is in on it as well. And we can see he is not in a wheelchair anymore. His lower half is a horse, so he's a centaur. A nice reveal at the end of the episode. So what did you guys think of episode 1 of Percy Jackson and the Olympians? Leave it down in the comments below, and if you want more Percy Jackson content, please subscribe and like the video. Check out the Twitter link in the description below, and as always, have an awesome day.